We're going to be having some fun in this video and prove a few things in modal logic. Thinking logically requires practice, so I think this is going to be a fun video where we're going to be proving some things. It's a cognitive muscle to develop. And really the ability to prove things step by step by step helps us strengthen our reasoning skills. It makes us clear and precise in our thinking, and it thereby makes us better thinkers. Logic helps us acquire knowledge that is true and justified beliefs. Learning logic should not be a mere intellectual chess game. Rather, it should be a means to expand our knowledge about the world around us. Hi, I'm the Amateur Logician from amateurlogician.com. Let's get started and do some modal logic here. And I'm referencing 3 books. One of them I've talked about before on this YouTube channel a long time ago, and that's Introduction to Logic by Harry Gensler. The other 2 books I'll talk about probably in future videos. Now, if you're comfortable with propositional logic and maybe some predicate logic, then you should be good to go with basic modal logic. Although I don't think we're going to utilize much, if any, predicate logic in this video. Regardless, it should be fun. And one of those proofs can be viewed in relation to a so-called ontological proof of the existence of God. So, can you prove God's existence with modal logic? It's controversial, to be sure, but the argument is at least valid in one modal logic system. The great philosopher Plantington, who I talked about before, argues that a sound ontological argument can be provided. But that's just one thing we're going to explore here. And to set the stage, we have to think about some axioms. Now remember, we're thinking about modality in terms of necessity and possibility, where the box stands for necessary and the diamond stands for possible. Now there are different strengths in modal logic, and C.I. Lewis has labeled these different strengths. We're going to move to a very high level of strength. It has many axioms. There are other modal logic systems out there that have fewer. Now for our purposes, we're going to think about the axioms this way. So our first axiom, AS1, is that diamond P, double arrow, not box, not P. It is possible that P, if and only if, it is not necessary that not P. Now, in a way, this particular axiom we can say is true by definition. Now, in a previous video, I talked about how we can relate modal propositions on the square of opposition. So if we think about the proposition necessary P versus possibly P, necessary not P versus possibly not P, we have a square of opposition. And we can relate that possibly P as logically contradictive to necessarily not P. So because those are contradictories, the way we can say this is equivalent to this is to negate that upper right-hand side. And that makes intuitive sense, right? By definition, so to speak, in that it is possible that P is going to be logically equivalent to it is not necessary that not P. Those go together. They stand or fall together. They both logically imply each other. The second axiom deals with modal distribution. So we have our second axiom, box, parentheses, P, arrow Q, close parentheses, arrow, parentheses, box P, arrow, box Q, close parentheses. So this is modal distribution. Or in other words, we have the modal distribution axiom. If it is necessary that if P, then Q, then it is necessary that P is necessary then that Q. Or in other words, if it is necessary in all possible worlds that if P, then Q, it is then necessary that if P is true in all possible worlds, then Q will likewise be possible in all possible worlds. For our third axiom, we have box P, arrow P. If it is necessary that P is the case, then P is the case. And this axiom in particular, I think, is very intuitive. If something is indeed necessary in all possible worlds, then that will include the actual one we reside in. So if it is necessary that P is the case, then P is the case. Axiom 4 is more controversial. So here we have our fourth axiom, where we have diamond, P, arrow, box, diamond, P. If it is possible that P is the case, then it is necessary that P is possibly the case. So, as you can see, this is not as intuitive. And there are so-called weaker modal logics where this axiom is simply not upheld. But for our purposes, we will affirm that. But one way to get some intuition about why someone might accept it is to think about what is logically possible as necessarily possible by logic itself constraining what is possible. It's kind of convoluted, but think about something like a squared circle. That's not possible. But something like a unicorn, while not actually existing, it is not logically impossible, and so its logical possibility, we might say, is necessarily so. So there does seem to be some intuition about why someone might accept that. And then finally, another important point is necessitation. Because here, we can say that if, let's say, phi has been proven as a theorem, then it follows that it is necessarily the case that phi. And when we're doing a theorem, we don't have any premises. We're only going to be utilizing our axioms and our various rules of inference from propositional logic and predicate logic. And those rules of inference are just the standard rules of inference like modus ponens, modus tollens, disjunctive syllogism, etc., etc. We can also do conditional proofs. We can do indirect or reductio absurdum proofs, and so forth. So the first thing we're going to prove is that if P, then possibly P. Now, at an intuitive level, that seems pretty clearly true. If P is the case, then it must be that P is possibly the case. That almost seems trivial. But that's not one of the axioms. So we really do have to prove that from the axioms. Now, when it comes to utilizing those axioms, we engage in substitution. We can substitute whatever we want, so to speak, into a P. So in this case, think about axiom 3. So box P, arrow P, and we'll just substitute a not P in for P. So for line 1, we're just going to say box, not P, arrow, not P. And we're just utilizing axiom 3, and we're engaging in substitution. We substituted not P in for P. Now let's just flip. Okay, we can flip the antecedent and consequent of that conditional and negate both because we have something that's logically equivalent. It's a contraposition. So for line 2, we'll say not P, arrow, not box, not P by contraposition of line 1. Then we can clean that up, so to speak, because we have those two negations. So for line 3, we can get P from that not P. So P, arrow, not box, not P. So that's a double negation utilizing line 2. And now let's utilize that axiom 1. We'll substitute P in there. So for line 4, we will get diamond P, double arrow, not box, not P. We're utilizing our axiom 1. We can get a conditional out of a biconditional. So for line 5, not box, not P, arrow, diamond P, because we have a biconditional. And a biconditional can be broken into two conditionals, so to speak. And now notice we have a hypothetical syllogism staring us in the face. Line 3, we have P, arrow, not, box, not P. And then we have this not, box, not P, arrow, possibly P. So we'll interconnect them, so to speak. So therefore, for line 6, we can say if P, then possibly P, because we have a hypothetical syllogism with lines 3 and 4. Awesome. So we proved that this indeed is the case. It is a theorem that's derivable in modal logic. If P is the case, then P is possibly the case. And note that we can utilize that theorem in future proofs. We proved it, we're good to go, and we could utilize it again. So for our next example, we're going to prove, and this is going to be building up to that proof that we can connect to God's existence, to an ontological proof. Box P, double arrow, not diamond, not P. So same idea. Utilize those axioms, and perhaps our previous theorem, and utilize our standard rules of inference. So ultimately, we want to end up at this biconditional. And first, let's think about our axioms. Like anything, it takes practice. And it just takes working through exercises for things to click. That's the only way you can get good at this stuff, or at least decent at this stuff. So let's utilize our first axiom. So for line 1, we can get diamond, not P, double arrow, not box, not P, and we're utilizing our first axiom. We're gauging in substitution. Let's clean this up because we have those two negations. So we have diamond, not P, double arrow, not box P, double negation with line 1. Line 3, let's break up that biconditional into two conditionals. Diamond, not P, arrow, not box P by our biconditional law with line 2. Likewise, for line 4, we can get not box P, arrow, diamond, not P, biconditional law, line 2. We want to make sure, so to speak, things line up. For line 5, let's engage in contraposition with lines 3 and 4. So with lines 3, we can get a not box P, arrow, not diamond, not P, contraposition, line 3. And likewise for 6, we can get a not diamond, not P, arrow, not box P, contraposition 4. Let's just now form a biconditional given 5 and 6. So for 7, we can get not box P, double arrow, not diamond, not P by our biconditional law with lines 5 and 6. And then we can clean this up by double negation. So for 8, we can therefore get box P, double arrow, not diamond, not P, double negation, line 7. Great. P is necessarily the case if and only if it is not possibly the case of not P. And perhaps most interestingly, we're going to prove that diamond, box, P, arrow, box P. What if P stands for God exists? So for line 1, we can get diamond, box P, double arrow, not box, not box P, and we're just using substitution with our first axiom. Let's take that biconditional, make it a conditional. So for line 2, we can get diamond, box P, arrow, not box, P, biconditional law with line 1. But now, let's utilize our past theorem. So previously we proved that this is a truth of modal logic given the axioms we have, so to speak, agreed to. So for line 3, we're going to say box P, double arrow, not diamond, not P, by our theorem above. Okay, so for line 4, let's turn this into a conditional, so to speak. So we can get box P, arrow, not diamond, not P, biconditional law 3. And we'll engage in contraposition for line 5. So we get not diamond, not P, arrow, not box P. So we have our contraposition of 4. And then for 6, let's clean this up with double negation. So we get diamond, not P, arrow, not box P, double negation, line 5. For 7, and remember a theorem is necessarily true, so we can say box, parentheses, diamond, not P, arrow, not box P. So we're thinking about our theorem. For 8, we can utilize our second axiom when it comes to modal distribution. Hence we can say box, parentheses, diamond, not P, arrow, not box, P, close parentheses, arrow, parentheses, box, diamond, not P, arrow, box, not box P, close parentheses, and we're utilizing our second axiom. So for line 9, let's just do some modus ponens here. We have this line 7, we have this line 8. We can get box, diamond, not P, arrow, box, not box, P, by modus ponens with lines 7 and 8. So for 10, I'm going to do a contraposition. So we can get not box P, arrow, not box, diamond P, contraposition with line 9. And notice we have a hypothetical syllogism if you look very, very carefully. So with line 2, and with this line 10 here, and so for 11, we can say that diamond, box P, arrow, not box, diamond P, by our hypothetical syllogism with lines 2 and 10. Next, we're going to utilize an axiom. So for line 12, we're going to utilize that fourth axiom, which is more controversial. So we can say that diamond, not P, arrow, box, diamond, not P, axiom 3 for line 13. Let's do a contraposition on that. Not, box, diamond, not P, arrow, not diamond, not P, contraposition, line 12. And we have another hypothetical syllogism. So that contraposition did help. Line 11. Note line 13. And so for line 14, we get diamond, box P, arrow, not diamond, not P, hypothetical syllogism, lines 11 and 13. And if we think about line 3, okay, we can create another hypothetical syllogism, but right now line 3 is a biconditional. Let's turn that into a conditional. So for line 15, we can get not diamond, not P, arrow, box P, biconditional law, line 3. And now we have a hypothetical syllogism with line 14 and line 15. So for line 16, we can say therefore diamond, box P, arrow, box P, by our hypothetical syllogism with lines 14 and 15. We have proved that if it is possibly necessary that P is a case, then P is necessarily the case. And this type of argument leads to, or can lead to, an ontological argument for God's existence. Although, as I said, that's controversial, even among theists, it is nevertheless a very interesting argument. It's somewhat challenging, to be sure. It does take practice getting good at these proofs, thinking strategically in terms of, for example, using contraposition to then utilize the hypothetical syllogism inference. But it's definitely possible to state it in terms of modality. Doing these proofs are definitely possible if you are a rational animal, so to speak. My apologies for any mistakes. I think I made a couple in terms of the numbering, and also I thought I wrote down the last axiom, but it didn't appear on the screen, so the P is missing there in the antecedent. But anyways, I am the Amateur Logician from amateurlogician.com, and if you enjoyed this type of video and you want to see more videos where I do proofs like this, let me know. And please consider buying me a cup of coffee. There's a link below. I would really appreciate it. But thank you so much for watching. Good luck to you and be well. Until next time, see ya.